What's up, everyone? Welcome to the inaugural episode of Bring the Heavy with Curt and Evan, your all-access pass to the behind the scenes of the scene. We're here to celebrate the history and evolution of the genre while we talk with the people that made it happen. I'm one of your hosts, Curt.
I'm your other host, Evan.
And today, we have to do introductions. We have to set the stage, Evan.
I guess we're just going to talk about who we are a little bit, because some people might not know who I am, and they might not know who you are, I would imagine.
Probably. So let's set the stage. So where do you come from for starting this podcast?
All right. So for anyone that might not know, my name is Evan, and I used to tour with metal bands. So I have an Instagram account at IDW Museum, and it's a look back at the 6 years that I spent in the band I Declare War. I was kind of the head music writer, band runner for about 6 years, starting in 2006. And I spent a lot of time touring and had a ton of memories from it, and I wanted to look back on them. So I made this Instagram account to look back on it day by day and look at it literally like what was happening on each day. And I can look back and see where I was in the country or what we were doing as a band. So it's been a lot of fun to look at all this old stuff. And I was kind of thinking it would be fun to talk to other people that I know that have these same kind of stories, and they can give us the same kind of background on their bands. Or if maybe not their band, but, you know, someone that's involved in the scene in another way, like a photographer or someone from a website, or, you know, anything that kind of helped to the deathcore genre blow up in the early 2000s. And so that kind of made me think this would be a fun project. And Curt has some background in podcasting, and we've been friends pretty much since 2008. So it seemed like a perfect combination.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I'm glad you mentioned the like photographers and stuff too, because one of the most interesting things that I've gained from our friendship is just the perspective of how much stuff goes on behind the scenes that you probably aren't aware of if you're just going and watching shows. So yeah, it'll be really cool to be able to talk to some musicians and other people as well.
Yeah. There's so much more to the genre and the music than just the music itself. So, you know, hearing background on a lot of this old stuff will be really interesting, I think.
So, how should we start telling this story then?
So if we go back to 2008, I Declare War had been around for about 2 years, and we had put out an album a year before. We put this album out called Amidst the Bloodshed, and we were kind of dipping our toes into doing some more national touring. And it was our first time going to the East Coast in May of 2008. And we were really taking the band seriously and getting into it, because we were kind of getting some MySpace buzz. And we bought this van from a church out in Port Orchard, Washington, tiny little town way out in the peninsula, and bought this van, and a few days later head out on this tour to go to the East Coast, touring with our label mates, Cholera. They were also on the Compton Records. And we're day into the drive, and the transmission goes out. And we are stuck on the side of the road in Colorado or Utah. I can't remember exactly where we were. It was somewhere right near the border of Colorado and Utah. So we're stuck, and we get this long ride into Grand Junction, Colorado, which was where our first show was supposed to be. Ride on the back of this trailer and to Grand Junction, and end up staying with these people that were hosting the show. I guess I posted on MySpace that we had broken down, and if there was anything that people could do to help us out, it would be great if they could buy some merch, because that would send us some money, and even though it wouldn't be a whole lot of money, it would be helpful. It would be nice, get us some money to get us back on the road and heading back out to the East Coast. And I think that's where Curt came into the picture.
Yeah, so as that is happening to you, I'm sitting in study hall at my high school, and I think I had found you. I remember finding I Declare War in my study hall on my laptop, because I had friends that had gotten me into deathcore and hardcore and other heavy music, and they were always showing me bands, and every heavy band that I liked was one that they showed me. So I just for fun, or I guess to challenge myself, I wanted to try to find a good band that I could show them.
Flex your muscle a little bit.
Yeah, so I just needed something that was something that was mine. So I started looking, and whether, I don't remember if it was Google or I was really heavy into MySpace then, so I started searching around for really heavy deathcore bands, and I found I Declare War. And so I had, like you said, you had just put out Amidst the Bloodshed, so I had that album. I had it on CD, and actually, at the time, you didn't have to specify, because nothing was out on vinyl back
the
then.
only way you could get it.
If you owned it, it was on CD.
Couldn't even
This was
download
even
it.
before, I was gonna say, before Spotify. But yeah, so that was how I found I Declare War, and then when you posted that bulletin on MySpace about having your van being broken down, I just messaged the I Declare War MySpace page, and I said something like, "Hey, I'll buy a T-shirt. Your T-shirts are only like $10." So I was like, "If I send you like $25 for a $10 T-shirt, do you think you guys could send like some stickers or an autograph or something?" And you replied. You said yes. And I think, like I said, I was just in high school, so I was just a kid, and I think I didn't really expect you guys to like reply. Like I didn't. I was just kind of feeling it out as it went. So when you were so receptive to this idea, and I just thought it was really cool that this band replied to me, I kept replying every time you replied, and it just kind of turned into a conversation. And it just kind of sparked a friendship. So I bought it was just a black I Declare War logo T-shirt, and it said "Bring the Heavy" on the back across the bottom.
Love that full circle.
Yeah. Here we are now with Bring the Heavy podcast. Yeah, and then eventually your label put out like a fundraiser T-shirt for you guys, and I bought that too, and yeah, that's how it all started.
Yeah, I remember I was working at it's like a private mailbox type place at the time, and I was able to mail out some extra stuff to you, and I remember mailing out like a little Amidst the Bloodshed promo card or something that I had everyone sign, and like I think you said there was like a sticker or something, like a
Yeah, there were like these holographic foil I Declare War and Compton Records stickers, and We used to go to a craft store and we would buy, it was like a 2 by 3 foot magnet, and then we'd put stickers on it and cut them out so we could like put them on more than one thing. And so like I had those stickers turned magnets for like over 10 years. Like they were on like my dorm fridge, and then like they were in the fridge in my first house like for a long time. Like, well, I just kept recycling them forever because we put them on magnets. But yeah,
That's awesome.
and I know I've said this before, but looking back, like having the perspective of an adult, it was very gracious of you to like be so like into that idea of, like it was really only like 10 or 15 more dollars. Like what does that really buy? Um, but you were super cool about, sending autographs and stickers, and all that stuff was like super cool to a high school kid and all that. So that was really, it was pretty sweet.
But see, I think I saw a lot of myself in you at the time because I was exactly that. Maybe I didn't have the same MySpace type experience in high school, but like I looked up to my favorite bands and wanted nothing more to talk to them and chat them up and get their autograph when I went to shows and stuff. So I probably saw myself in you and was like, I feel where this guy's at and I'm into it.
And I mean, yeah, we went from MySpace to AOL Instant Messenger and to Facebook Messenger, and now we text. We're pretty. We still, however many years later, we still talk all the time, and now we're starting a podcast.
Yeah, definitely one of the few people that I still talk to about heavy music. Not a lot of people carried that with them into their later years, to say the least. But speaking of that, 2008, you say you're trying to find a super heavy metal band to show someone else. What else are you listening to at the time? Like, how did you end up getting into deathcore in the first place?
I started listening to deathcore in high school. I kind of grew up listening to like the local classic rock radio stations, and my favorite bands on those stations were always kind of the heavier, like the AC/DC, Ozzy, Deep Purple, any of those like classic 80s hard rock bands. And when I started hanging out with some of my new friends in high school, they were super into metalcore and hardcore music. And then as deathcore kind of started to become something that was separate from those two genres, they just jumped off the deep end, and I started to get into it too. And I don't know if I would say really heavy, but I really liked Guar from a pretty young age, and that was definitely my favorite band in high school. But I started to get into Heavy Lolo and Horse the Band, and I think those kind of had some gimmicky weirdness to them that made them stick out and appeal to me out of all the bands they were listening to. But once I heard Suicide Silence and Impending Doom and Despised Icon, those bands really just clicked for me. Something about them, I just really liked it right out the gate. And so those were kind of my starter kit bands. And it was 2006, 2007, 2008. So I was kind of primed for the beginning of deathcore to blow up. So
Yeah.
so you had said though that you didn't have MySpace in high school. You're a little bit older than I am. What were some of the first heavy bands that you listened to?
Well, I mean, I did have MySpace in high school. I'm not that much older than you,
No.
but I was kind of I was kind of a pop punk kid. I grew up watching TRL on MTV. So basically, every day I would come home and TRL would be on, and I was super into like Blink 182 and Sum 41 and all that stuff when all that was when I was kind of the perfect age for it at the time as well. And then once I got into middle school, I met this guy in my gym class. Both of us really did not want to be in the gym class. And so we kind of hung out, and he showed me Metallica. And that was kind of the first thing that got me into like really heavy, actually heavy stuff, and kind of branched out from there. So this is around like 2002, 2003. Actually, is that right? That can't be. Yeah. So we're talking like 99, 2000, 2001, even earlier. So maybe I am a little bit older than I want to admit. But so 2001 was actually a really big year for me because that was a year that I went to just like show after show after show, and they were all kind of like life changing and establishing music interests all at the same time. And kind of the first one that really did it for me was this show called Boarding for Breast Cancer. It was this breast cancer awareness and charity show, basically, at a ski resort in Lake Tahoe. And the stage was set up literally at the bottom of this ski run. When you got your ticket, you got a ski lift pass so you could go skiing with your concert ticket. And the show was Linkin Park, Static X, Cottonmouth Kings, and a really kind of unknown new metal band called Stereo Mud. And I met the Stereo Mud guys after their set, during one of the breaks. And I thought it was so cool that they were talking to me and they signed my little demo CD that I got from them. And it was such a big deal to meet this real band. I actually saw them on this show with Linkin Park. And then, of course, Cottonmouth Kings, that was not really what I went for, and my first experience with weed, which as a 14-year-old is interesting. But then Static X comes on, industrial new metal, and got really into that for a while too. Thought Wayne Static was pretty cool with his huge hair and kind of robotic just weirdness that they were. And then Linkin Park comes on and just destroys the just incredible show. It's actually on YouTube. The show was webcast at the time, which was what it was called. And it was saved, and it's actually on YouTube. So you can go to YouTube and search for Boarding for Breast Cancer and find the set of Linkin Park playing at a ski resort in Lake Tahoe in 2001. And it's super cool that that's available for me to go back and kind of look at and be like, I was there. And, this was kind of what really turned me into a music fan and a believer of it all. So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That is cool.
And yeah, I did a few other shows that year. I saw Blink 182 in Sacramento. I actually won tickets on the radio with my mom, and so we drove down together and saw Blink 182 at some amphitheater in Sacramento for free. And then in September of 2001, just 2 weeks after 9/11, I saw the biggest new metal tour that could have ever been. Um, Slipknot, System of a Down, Rammstein, and Mudvayne. This was the Pledge of Allegiance tour, and I could not have been more excited for it.
Those are four big names to have on one.
Oh, incredibly
Those
huge.
are like
Yeah,
four headlining bands.
this was an arena, and I was absolutely obsessed with Slipknot at the time. With once I got into Linkin Park, things were just kind of getting heavier and heavier as I heard more. I just liked it to get heavier, and Slipknot was really something that just took off for me. And so I was absolutely obsessed with them. Iowa had just come out, so this was their big tour promoting Iowa. And me and my older group of friends drove down to San Jose and yeah, went to this show. And that was like totally life changing to see Slipknot live, and just having been so obsessed with the visual aspect of it, and then seeing it in real life was a big deal for me. So yeah, 2001 was a big year for me as far as cementing music as a powerful force in my life.
I think it's interesting when you have those moments that are so important and they're so close together, where you kind of look back and you're just like, wow, those are like no wonder I'm like obsessed with this. Like,
Yeah, and you didn't even realize it at the time, and then yeah, and it's boom, 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 one right after the other. Yeah, it's crazy.
I kind of had a similar experience with when I started going to shows. It was in 2007. The first like real show I ever went to was in April of 2007, and it was at a venue called The Station in Portland, Maine. And I was 17 years old. I went with a friend. And so, not only was it influential because it was the first show I ever went to, it like honestly, it had to have been one of the first things I ever did without like a chaperone, like, like without anyone's parents. My friend was a year or two older than me, and he had a car, and he was like, "Hey, I want to go to this. Do you want to go?" And I mean, a ticket was like $12 or something,
Yeah.
So, and I'll never forget, the Station was like an underground like billiards club in Portland. So when you go in the doors, you have to like walk down these brick stairs, so you're just like descending into this like dark underground bar, and there's like a bar, and there's pool tables everywhere, and then they have this stage. And I mean, that was my very first show, and I saw The End, Heavy Heavy Low Low, Fear Before, and Poison the Well. And it was awesome. I loved it. I really liked Heavy Heavy Low Low. So I bought their CD, and I kind of had a similar experience where it was like, like that's the guy. Like he's just
Yeah.
at the table. Like I just saw you at the on stage, like doing this insane thing I've never seen before, and now you're just hanging out and like selling merch. So I bought their first full length there, and it was just a super cool experience. And then, just 3 months later, I mean, I was all in. I loved it. I had already been obsessed with metal music, and like I mentioned earlier, I loved Guar. So in July of 2007, I went down to Worcester, Massachusetts to see Sounds of the Underground. And that was just like the ultimate lineup for like bands that I like. I mean, it was Guar, Shadows Fall, Chimera, Every Time I Die, Job for a Cowboy, Darkest Hour, The Acacia Strain, Heavy Heavy Low
Insane.
Low, just so many. And I mean, that was the first time I saw The Acacia Strain. And my friends who liked metal, they were aware of most of the bands that played there, and they'd be like, "Oh, that band's good," or or tell me which ones they didn't care to see. And it's so weird to think back, and because the Acacia Strain is one of my favorite bands, and to think like, oh my god, I didn't even know about them the first time I saw them. I was just there to see other bands. There were a few
Oh,
there
so
that,
that was your first exposure to them, was actually seeing them live.
yeah. Same thing with Every Time I Die. I
Wow.
love Every Time I Die, and I really was just there to see Guar and Heavy Heavy Lolo. And leading up to it, I had checked out some of the other bands, and yeah, but I just remember the Acacia Strain just being really heavy because they
Well,
were tuned really low. So that's like some of those bands, like I only remember one little piece of it was like 13 bands in one day, but that's like the thing that stuck out about the Acacia Strain was just like, whoa, that's loud,
what were they promoting at the time?
The Dead Walk.
That was the Dead Walk? Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Continent came out a year later, which I went to the CD release party of that album too. So, yeah, it was kind of weird to see them, and when I think back on it, and I know you can go and look at the set lists online and stuff, and to have a band that you followed for so much of their career, and you look back and you're like, God, I can't even believe that was the set. It was just these
Yeah.
two albums. That's what we got. Like, so yeah, that was kind of. I had a very similar experience just a few years later of just being, pulled right in, and then that was all I cared about for a long time. Was just going to shows and buying CDs, and as I've gotten older, it's turned into vinyl. I think I still have like 500 CDs, and I don't know how many vinyl records I have, but it's a shameful amount. And I have realized my interest in music has I have kind of an archival interest in it, where I don't really have a desire to try to play music anymore or be in a band. I've gotten really into the culture of listening to music and collecting music, and I think what draws me to doing this podcast is just that it kind of combines those interests of just organizing information and that archival mindset with about something that I love. So I think that's going to be pretty fun.
I feel something very similar to that as well. I've been off and on for years telling myself that I'm going to pick up my guitar and get back into it, and start writing music and do a new project and stuff. And I was looking into buying a bass, but I go in and out of these phases of like really wanting to do it and then not wanting to do it, and I kind of feel like I'm in a similar space of like, you know what, I did that and I had my time and it was cool, and you know what, maybe I don't need to do that anymore. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm not gonna say that I'll never pick up a guitar again or anything, but it's
Yeah.
it's less of a priority than I thought it was going to be at one point. I'll say that. Do you have any other shows that stick out in your mind that you've been to that were really important to you, or
Yeah. I
that
mean,
you really loved?
gosh, yeah. I mean, I've seen the Acacia Strain 16 times. Actually, I'm going to see them a 17th time. I just bought tickets the other day for their upcoming tour. And because I've seen them so many times, I was at the Continent release party that I mentioned earlier. I was at their DVD shoot. I went to the DVD screening concert. There are just a bunch of really cool experiences I have seeing them. I've seen Guar 5 times. Those are definitely some memorable shows. I got to see the Misfits at Madison Square Garden. That was crazy. And then I think like kind of some weirder ones though, but like seeing Sleep at the State Theater in Portland, that was one of the coolest shows I've ever been to. Seeing Weird Al was one of the best concerts I've ever been to. And then
I appreciate that so much from a production standpoint that I just think that's so awesome.
I can't even imagine, dude. And then, anytime you guys came around, or if you were touring with I Declare War, or you were touring with Whitechapel, that was always really cool because I knew I would get to see a good show and I'd get to hang out with you guys and walk around town and do stuff and kind of live vicariously through you for a day, because for years that was like the pinnacle of like coolness to me, so it was always really fun when we got to do that. We've only hung out in person 5 times, I think, since in 15 years. So
yeah, that's wild to think about. Yeah, Maine definitely doesn't come up very often on tours.
No, it's pretty much a guarantee that I'll have to travel at least. It's not like it's that bad, but at least an hour. Like the closest possible show I'll ever get to go to is an hour from here, and that's pretty rare these days. A lot of times, ever since the station closed, it's pretty much the Palladium in Worcester, which is like 3.5 hours from where I live. So,
and that takes a lot of planning. That's not just hey, let's go to the show. You really gotta figure out how it's working and all the mechanics of it.
Yeah, that's like the logistics become tough because metal shows aren't expensive. It's just that the logistics of who's gonna go, when we're gonna get tickets, like who's driving, are we staying overnight, like all that type of stuff is becomes more of a hassle than just going to the show. And man, there's like, as much as I love going to shows, there's like nothing worse to me than walking out of a venue at like 1 a.m. and being like, well,
the worst.
We got 4 hours to go. Like,
the worst.
Let's go home.
Yeah. And especially for me lately too, I haven't had a car in about 2.5, almost 3 years now. And so I rely on the bus which is on one hand awesome because you don't have to worry about parking. You can just go and show up to the show. If you drink, which I don't drink, but if you drink, you can drink and you don't have to worry about, driving home or anything. So using the bus to go to the show is awesome, but it sucks at the same time because I was at a show and I checked when the next bus was coming, and it was like I had to bolt out the door or I was going to be waiting another half hour after the show ended, just sitting outside waiting for the next bus.
Oh,
so,
man.
It has its pros and cons, but yeah, it is interesting once you're older how much things change when you go to shows. One show that was really important for me was the August 3rd date of Mayhem in 2012. This was the year that I started working for Whitechapel, and I had just randomly jumped on the tour with them and started working for them and was suddenly watching Slipknot, Slayer, and, all these other bands every day. But on the August 3rd date, I got a photo pass and was able to. So Whitechapel pretty much opened the tour. So it was like we played first thing, and then we had the rest of the day just to hang out. And so I got a photo pass so that I could run around and take pictures of all the rest of the bands that I wanted to. And ended up getting a pass for Slipknot as well. And, taking photos of my favorite bands since I've been, 14. Suddenly I'm on this tour with them, and I'm taking photos of them. And then each band on the tour throws a party at one point during the tour. And I can't remember who. I think it was Upon a Burning Body. I think it was their party that night. But we just happened to run into Mick Thompson from Slipknot at the party. And it was like right after I had been photographing him, and it was, I was utterly speechless. I was with Zach from Whitechapel, and I had to ask him to ask for a picture for me because I was just, I literally couldn't say anything. And so that was super cool. That was a really big important show for me. I saw Linkin Park again in 2014 with 30 Seconds to Mars and AFI. This was kind of a random show too because my old guitar player from I Declare War, Chris Fugate, he texted me and goes, I told my niece that I was going to take her to this Linkin Park show only if she got her grades up, but she slacked off, didn't get her grades up, and I'm gonna hold her. I'm gonna hold her to it. And so I've got this extra Linkin Park ticket. Do you want to come? And so I was like, well, I mean, obviously, Linkin Park again, one of my favorite bands since I've been 14. So I got a chance to see Linkin Park again. Luckily, a few years before Chester passed away. And again, one other show that's kind of special in my mind now at this point is the Up From the Sewer tour that I saw in September of 2021. And that was the Black Dahlia Murder, After the Burial, and Carnifex. And, I'm sure as most people know, that was Black Dahlia Murder's final tour with Trevor as vocalist. So knowing that was one of the first shows coming back from COVID, and that it was, final time I'd see Trevor. I didn't know Trevor, but, I'd seen Black Dahlia Murder a million times. So knowing that it is the final time that I saw them as that band is, holds a special place for me as well. So, yeah.
I think that's definitely one of the things that I've thought about a lot as, an old guy who used to go to metal shows a lot when I was younger. There are just these memories of things that can't be replicated. And I think about that a lot and how special some of these shows are. Not just for there you have your formative shows like we talked about, but sometimes you'll just catch a show and not even realize that years later that's going to be such an important event in your life.
Well, yeah, and when you're younger, it seems kind of corny to have memories and look back on things fondly, and you don't. Once you get older, that stuff really changes, and your perspective shifts on it quite dramatically. At least for me, it has. And speaking of that same kind of thing, I became friends with Dave Brocky from Guar when I I was working for Whitechapel. Randomly, we were chatting about Breaking Bad. He was watching it for the first time on his bus and I had already seen it, and he told me that he was watching it for the first time, and I was so excited, and so we just started chatting about it every time we saw each other. He was updating me on where he was at in the series, and one of my all-time favorite memories in life is the I'm standing backstage packing up after Whitechapel's set. The elevator door opens. There's Dave Brocky, fully dressed, getting ready to go out on stage. Walks out of the elevator by himself, looks at me and says, R.I.P. Walter White. I said, you finished it. And my tour manager was standing right there, and he took a picture of us talking because it was just this absurd image of this guy, talking to me, and we're just talking about Breaking Bad, and it's like one of my fondest memories. And so, yeah, it's cool to have that documented, and here we are again. That's kind of what this podcast is all about, documenting memories and looking back on things that meant a lot to us and meant a lot to other people. My Instagram account is small. My intention with it was never to make it be a viral huge thing and have thousands of followers and be super cool and everything. It literally was for me to categorize this stuff and have a backlog of where I was. And now it's got almost 500 followers, and people interact with me on a daily basis, and they tell me when they were at shows, and so it's really fun to interact with people and give them memories as well. So I really hope that's kind of the intent of the podcast is bring up good memories and for other people.
I think that's a great place to start, is just to share some of these memories. And I think that if we can find some other people that are close to this world, I think it'll be good to see what they think about things too. And I, as an outsider, I'm really excited to see how your experiences correlate with other people's experiences, to see just, I don't know, similarities, differences between you and the experiences that other musicians had.
That's definitely something I'm really interested in also, is just kind of seeing, how our experiences overlap and kind of, what I experienced, if that's, I don't want to say normal, but if what I went through and what I experienced was kind of the standard, or if that was just kind of, if we were really just kind of off on our own, doing our own thing, and it really is super unique and individual. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
So one last thing I want to kind of talk about a little bit is, we've talked about how we got into metal and some of our experiences with that, but I'm curious now what some of your favorite bands are in 2023, just because I think it'll be cool to, see where you started and now see where you are after all this experience.
Yeah. I definitely listen to a lot less metal than I used to. I still have my go-tos, and I have been browsing around to see kind of what's been happening in the scene lately, because there's a lot of new stuff that's kind of blown me away that I wasn't even aware that was happening. So it's kind of cool being the old guy now, looking at the young kids doing the new stuff. But I always have to tell people that my favorite band is Thrice. They were kind of the first band that I really developed a super hardcore following for, even though I haven't mentioned them at all up to this point. I have a Thrice tattoo. I see them literally every chance I get. They're my favorite band, even if I don't always mention them or always listen to them. They're still my favorite band. But besides that, I listen to a lot of Animals as Leaders, After the Burial, Mastodon, The Red Chord. Still listen to a lot of the Black Dahlia Murder. Really looking forward to hearing what the new stuff is going to sound like. As far as not so heavy stuff, probably my favorite band is Tycho. Love Daft Punk. One of my favorite bands of all time is Minus the Bear, local Seattle band. They were super cool. I've seen them in in-store performances and random little shows here since they're local. Went to their final show. Have the vinyl record from that show too.
That's really cool.
This other band called the Album Leaf, which is this really interesting violin, DJ, drum. I don't even know how to describe what this band is, but they're really incredible. I listen to a lot of them. Just saw them. They're coming back in May. I might get tickets to go see that show as well, where I just saw them a few months ago. So, yeah, really like them.
We recommend music to each other a lot, and I think the Album Leaf for sure is one of the bands that I've started to love the most that you recommended to me. They have a couple albums that are just like blow me away every time I listen to them.
How about you?
I think as far as like metal bands, the Acacia Strain is one of my favorite bands. Guar is one of my favorite. Despised Icon, Heavy Heavy Low Low. I've been getting really in the past couple of years. I've been getting really into slam. So like I've been listening to Devourment all the time. I think that's probably been my favorite thing about getting older is that I'm not so connected to deathcore. So my interests in metal are kind of branching out into all these other weird types of metal that aren't just the new deathcore band or whatever. But I like so much other stuff too. I mean, AC/DC, Bloodhound Gang, The Misfits, MF Doom, Madlib, Tom Waits, Wu-Tang Clan, Weird Al, Black Sabbath, Alex Cameron. There are just so many bands that I just absolutely love that it's kind of hard to I have in my head like a top 10 favorite bands or whatever, but the more I look at it, the more I'm just like, God, I don't think I can do a top 10. Like, I don't think I can I just have so many bands that I love. And especially when it comes to, I love metal, but I also love hip hop. I love vaporwave. I love some electronic music. It gets hard the more diverse your interests get, but I hope that I hope that sums it up enough for the scope of the podcast. At least some of my favorite metal bands, anyway.
I love that, even throughout that whole list, you've got Weird Al included in there. And I know you mentioned that on, you said that you went to a show of his that was pretty amazing. But I love that that's still a pillar in your music taste.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. And I think when you go to show after show after show over years, and you kind of really get used to what a metal show is like, and then you go to something and you just have that experience where like, this is a concert. Like, this is not like four dudes in cargo shorts playing in a basement. This is like a production. And I think the impact that seeing Weird Al live had on me was probably part of the reason it was so memorable is because it was such a contrast to what my entire life experience of shows had been like up to that point.
Yeah,
But
totally.
he's one of my favorites for sure.
You can almost relate that to Guar because they have, such an insane amount of production. And, I did a 6 week tour with them and saw everything that went into that, and just doing that day after day after day. And God, they've been around since the early 80s, haven't they? Like, they've been doing this stuff for so long. And yeah, just seeing the production and knowing what goes into it blows my mind. And what's crazy is what I saw was kind of a pared down version of Guar. Like
Yeah.
Guar used to be a big deal, right?
Yeah, I think I never got to see them in that era, but some of their older concert DVDs like Tour de Scum and Dawn of the Day and the Night of the Penguins, I think there was a bigger focus on the show production aspect of it, and I think the music performance took a kind of a back seat, and I think in more recent years they've kind of flipped that a little bit. So, but I mean, like you were saying, even what they do now is still amazing. Like you're watching it and you just can't even believe what you're seeing, you know. And I especially it's going to be interesting for you because where you have such a experience, the knowledge of what it takes to have like just a regular band play, and then to be like they're doing all of that plus they're like monsters and blood and
Yeah.
weapons and
Yeah, they've got just so many extra crew members and, people assigned to the blood tanks, and just like so much crazy extra stuff that's just unbelievable. So the show aspect of it, would you say that's still pretty important to you as far as Guar? Like, do you think you'd be as into Guar if it weren't for the show and the visuals, or is that kind of part of part of it?
um I mean I think they do go hand in hand, but um I do just genuinely love the music, you know. It's I'm like I said, I've seen them 5 times, and I think all but one time I was like right up front getting sprayed and having that whole experience. And then, um, but yeah, I love seeing them. I love being a part of that show. But I think the music, honestly, is I think I hold that higher than the show itself. I would love an opportunity to see, you know, Guar when they do the every once in a while when they do like an unmasked, you know, performance or whatever. I think they're a great band, regardless of, you know, the whole dinosaurs and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I came into heavy music in the new metal era, and new metal was just like, how weird can we be a lot of the time. And but I always kind of thought this, like, costumes and production stuff was kind of lame, but for some reason I was okay with it with Slipknot. Like, there was something
Yeah.
just, so maybe it was the music that really, connected to me, that, and it was like, yeah, I'll give this a pass. But, at the same time, Slipknot was also like doing that whole barcode thing, and like, branding themselves as, we are now this corporate product, and, kind of doing the whole, almost protest against it. So maybe I kind of thought that was cool too, and the whole package just appealed to me at the perfect time.
Yeah, I think we've talked before about how when it comes to like a masked costumed band, like it seems like you get one Like
Yeah.
every person has like one band where they're like, I don't know why, but like that's cool.
It's all
I
right.
don't really like the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's either that or you're super into it and that's like your thing.
Yeah, for me, it's like just Guar. Guar gets a pass. All the other costumes and stuff, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a little weird. So, Evan, man, I think that's going to be it for today. I think this was a really good start to introduce ourselves, talk about how we got to know each other, how we got into heavy music. I know next time we have a guest lined up and we're really excited to record with them. You've known them for a long time, so you guys
Yeah,
should
we
have
go
a
way
lot of
back.
cool stuff to talk about. And I know that I've got a lot of questions just because it's a really cool guest. I just want to say thank you to Cam Big Chocolate Argon from Disfiguring the Goddess. He was kind enough to write the intro theme for Bring the Heavy. So you heard that at the beginning. You'll hear it at the end.
Was that not the most perfect theme song you've ever heard?
It was super cool. I was so excited to hear it the first time, and it's still like I don't know. It's just super cool that he was willing to do that for us. So
I texted him and said, "Hey, would you have any interest in doing this? Just like, casually, just like out of the blue." I texted him because we text each other about Nickelback every once in a while randomly. I don't know why. I texted him saying, "Hey, do you think you might be down to write a song for us?" And a day later, I had a track, and it was perfect. So thank you so much, Cam. You are seriously one of the coolest people I know, and yeah, can't wait to talk in the future.
awesome. So until next time, you can listen to Bring the Heavy on Spotify. You should be able to find it on any of your podcast platforms. I think we're going to have it up on everything. If you want to follow Bring the Heavy on Instagram, it's at Bring the Heavy Pod. Is that it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it might just be Bring the Heavy.
Well, you can follow me at
Yeah, it's
Curt
Bring the
Cake
Heavy.
5K. Just Bring the Heavy
Yeah.
for the show. You can follow me at Curt Cake 5K on Letterboxd and Instagram. Evan, where can you be found on the internet?
You can find me on Instagram. Like I said earlier, my page is at IDW Museum, and that's where I kind of post my old I Declare War memories. And if you watch the stories every day, I'm actually posting memories of when I was touring with Whitechapel, and currently I just started my tour with As I Lay Dying, so posting pictures from the As I Lay Dying and Devil Wears Prada tour from 10 years ago right now.
All right. Well, I guess if that's it, we can say goodbye until next time.
Yeah, bring the heavy.
Bye, everyone.